Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about expectations. We all set expectations, whether we recognize and realize them or not. We have them for ourselves, we have them for others. Today we're going to focus on the ones that we set for others, because those expectations affect the relationships that we have with others. So we want to be really careful and first of all evaluate, are we setting expectations that are realistic? Are they expectations that we could meet ourselves if we were asked to meet them? Are they unrealistic expectations? Is that why they're unmet? Is that what's creating the problem? And we have to evaluate for ourselves, what are we expecting, and would that be fair? Would that be something that we would want expected of us even? So sometimes we look at those and we realize we just need to drop that expectation. It's kind of like we have a manual for how we want someone else to behave and act, and sometimes we're tougher on them than we are ourselves. If that's the case, we can reevaluate that and set out to have healthier expectations of ourselves and others, and drop the manual completely and build healthy relationships based on unconditional love. If the expectations that we have of others are not being met, what often it leads to is resentment. And resentment is not a pretty emotion to carry around. It often results in the emotion of resentment that can then lead to even bitterness and some deeper issues that we would later have to deal with. So we want to check that right at the beginning of recognizing it, and we want that resentment to come to a stop. What's odd about resentment is, and many emotions actually, is that our body, when we have thoughts, it starts to create a little cocktail for us to drink that is an emotion such as resentment, that we are the only one that experiences it. The other person in our relationship does not experience that cocktail. We're the one that drinks it. So if we walk around with resentment, unforgiveness, bitterness, etc., our little personal bartender is making these cocktails for us to drink, but we're the only one experiencing it. So we want to evaluate if we want to keep drinking that cocktail or not. And if we don't, then we have to look at what's the root of it. Is it our thoughts that are causing the resentment, or is it truly a genuine problem in the relationship that's causing these unmet expectations to cause the resentment? So looking deeper is often the best source when we're trying to evaluate and have healthy relationships with others and healthy expectations that can be mutual for all involved. So we want to look at it from a place of unconditional love. It's often that evaluation itself that will draw us closer to the person and create unconditional love and a connection that we would prefer to have. If we look at our reasons for why we may feel disconnected, it may actually come from those thoughts that we are putting out there of expectations, and those unmet expectations are creating a distance there and the resentment that we feel and that we're drinking from our cocktail. So remember that we are not going to change other people. We can only change ourselves, which is why it is effective to look at our own thoughts and our own emotions and what's causing them, and how we can show up in a way that would be healthier and express more unconditional love in relationships that would be both God-honoring and serving to others in a beautiful and unselfish way. So whenever we recognize that people are going to do what they want to do and we aren't going to change them, we have to make a conscious decision. If the things that they do and the way that they show up is not healthy for us, that's a whole nother podcast. But if we genuinely love them unconditionally and we want the best for them and for us in the relationship to continue, then we're going to have to evaluate where we're coming from and how we show up in the relationship. And sometimes these unmet expectations can be a really big problem that we can just simply look back at, and maybe it's time to consider dropping that manual, is what we call it. It's like a little, manual that we have for how others should behave in relationships, when in reality, we each have our own responsibilities in relationships. We have our own manual, it's called the Bible, for how we should behave and what we should do. And when we are evaluating ourselves and the other person is doing the same, we should be able to show up in a very healthy way and have strong and healthy relationships together. So just remember, when you're thinking about relationships, you're thinking about unmet expectations and how it's affecting you, look at those deeper roots of what's causing that resentment or that unforgiveness that you might be feeling, and evaluate whether it is a genuine problem or if it is simply some of the thoughts you're telling yourself, some of the ways that you are creating that story about your unmet expectation. So I hope this is helpful. You can find more information like this if you visit my website, stephaniejohns.com. Have a great day. Until next time, this is my hope for you. You can find me at stephaniejohns.com or on the gram at the Hope Coach. You can use the links in the show notes below to apply for one-on-one coaching and to join my email list.